Hello, welcome to the 11th, no, the 12th episode of this 88 series. It's not the 88 series, just 88 series. So whether you've watched any other videos or not, what's up? There's a lot of reasons I chose 88. And did I choose 88 or did it choose me? Um, I will not get into that right now. I'm actually just going to hop right back in with where I left off on the last video. And I'm gonna try not to go on tangents. Because what happens is I go on a thing and then I'll read the next slide and it's basically like a shorter version of what I have just said. And maybe there's a two things going on, more than that, but these two things that I'm naming being me having an issue with taking up space or being seen, but then also feeling like I just talk too much. And I want to be clear. Uh, well, I want to be, do I want to be clear? I have an issue with like I don't want to control anybody. So like what do I want? What does it mean to you? I don't know if what I want relates to what actually happens. But see here I'm going on a tangent. Maybe I shouldn't call them a tangent. I'll call them a tree branch. Maybe not. Okay. Pisces, and vision. So these Pisces, very interesting to dip in and dive into and then pull out of. We are going to be touching on some varying layers, like the hippocampus, as we continue forward. So, thank you for coming along for this ride. And if you have never watched one of these videos, I'm weird. I'm not that weird where you're like, oh my God, she's so weird. I just feel like I act like everybody understands what I'm talking about. And I think everybody does. But I might speak on things from a certain lens that is not necessarily the most conventional. It's 2026 now. Like people are definitely talking about more and more things a bit more openly. A little bit behind schedule in my opinion, but everything's right on time, whatever. Um, okay, so what was I saying? Okay. I did just go back and add some things that I had just posted on Instagram recently because we're currently, even though this isn't about the current time space, like you could potentially watch this in the future. And I was going to name a year, but part of me thinks, will the internet even be the way it is now? I don't know. And so it's what I'm saying is it doesn't have to be about you watching it right now and experiencing it. It's more like the things that I see and notice and what comes into my view and what I'm choosing to share or touch on. And so one of those things being that on May 16th, which is one of the best days of the year, if you know why, then cool. That was when the last moon cycle started. And so we're currently in this moon cycle from approximately May 16th to approximately June 14th. And I believe a lot is going to shift in this timing, but it actually is very funny, the timing that I'm now reading these slides that are including some of the energies that I shared about recently on social media when it comes to this current moon cycle. So, yeah. I guess I just always have to burp. It's like, what do people say? It's like an activation. I don't know. Could be that I'm talking about the autonomic nervous system so much. Okay, vision and division. We've touched on this already a little bit, but let us take a little bit of a deeper look. Division, the act of separating into parts, portions, or shares, a part separated or distinguished from the rest. State of being at variance in sentiment or interest, so the military being a portion of the army, fleet or ship's company. Math, the operation inverse to multiplication. So we have a spectrum beyond just good or bad when it comes to this word, of course. And then vision, something seen in the imagination or in the supernatural. Presence, sight, view, look, appearance, dream, supernatural sight, active seeing, sight, things seen. So often when I'm pulling these, they're not definitions, it's the etymology from a team online, which I have linked at certain parts when it was in the class. Like you can click on things, but I just wanted to say that because I don't think I've done the best job of making sure everybody knows where I've grabbed things from, and clearly it bothers me. So just comment if you have a question, and I will help you get access to what you need if you're seeking to do your own research or whatever. And then at the bottom here, I put Saga City, Sagacity, Shij. Oh, what? See, I did this so long ago. I'm like, I said Saga City, but I'm pretty sure that's not what it says here. Sagacity, sagacity, whatever. State or character of being keenly perceptive, acuteness of mental discernment. From Latin, sagacitatum, sagacitatum, tatum. Keenness of perception, quality of being acute. You are acute. Um, of quick perception, perceive keenly, prophetic. Okay, okay, this is also fitting in with the moon stuff in some regard, which is the word I usually use, which many may not like. It's interesting. Okay, the subconscious, how do I keep saying subconscious? Subconscious, I don't know. The subconscious mind is easily affected by peripheral vision, and it goes beyond time and it can affect it immediately. A sea of memory. And mind you, this is not, I'm not speaking from some factual, scientific, well, maybe those words are accurate. I don't know. But it's just how I have intuited since I was an infant and toddler. And then in school would fail classes as my teachers would be like, wow, what you talk about is not in the textbooks. Okay, so this sea of memory, our subconscious mind being connected to this sub vision, if you will. And it is not that it is so beyond extraordinarily special to have wide peripheral vision, and yet it is something I have asked people about since I was in third or fourth grade. And I noticed that people were more open to what I was talking about when it comes to my strange ideologies if they had a wider peripheral vision. So I just started asking people, how wide are your periffs? How wide are yours? In my life, so many people have been like, no one's ever asked me that. I'm like, I don't care. I just know when I took my first driver's ed, uh, and forgive me if I already mentioned this. It's been so long since I posted the other videos, but I was driving around with my driver's ed teacher. If you couldn't tell, that's what I was doing. It's like I'm back in the car, and I remember him being like, "Tell me what's around you." And I was a little bit hypervigilant. That was when I learned the term hypervigilant because he told me that I was hypervigilant. I was like, baby in stroller behind us, a block away with mom, dog walking to the, like, I wasn't looking, turning my head. I was just able to see all this stuff and was using the mirrors. And I was like telling him everything within a 2 block vicinity. And he was like, I meant like right near us. And I was like, oh, and like, I guess he meant like traffic or, and I was like, I could tell you everything that's going on. And so that's when I learned about hypervigilance, and it was especially confirmed for me that, oh my gosh, I'm driving around people who don't have wide periffs, and they are confidently like, and this goes beyond and goes back to what I was speaking about in third and fourth grade, lots of layers there, but where I was like, let me just ask someone if they had wide periffs, because if you have wider peripheral vision than someone who has a shallower or more narrow vision, this is what they're seeing. And they're like, yep, that's all there is. And so when you're like, well, what about this stuff? They're like, what are you, out of your mind? No, I'm out of your mind. I'm in your subconscious mind because I know it's in there. It has to be a sea of memory. The subconscious mind is easily affected by peripheral vision, and it goes beyond time as it can affect this vision, this mind, this memory immediately, a sea of memory. And with our eyes, we have cranial nerves and our cranium and different movements, processing connections to the central nervous system, brain and spine, and the peripheral nervous system, nerves and ganglia. I'm gonna apologize because when I see PNS, I smirk and giggle a little bit, and maybe someone would be like, "You're 38." Not me though. I'm here to remain an eternal child, even if that means people scoffing at my humor, which is giggling at PNS. Poseidon and his chariot drawn by seahorses, and this is a nod like the ass. Is it the atlas bone? Yeah, right. Um, to the hippocampus. So this is a hippocampus cartoon shape underneath where it says seahorses, a nod, and then this is seahorse. Okay. Remember, remembran, keep or bear someone or something in mind. Retain in the memory, preserve unforgotten, recall, bring to mind, from Latin rememorare. Rememorare. Recall to mind, remember again, be mindful of. The meaning recall to mind, bring again to the memory is from the late 14th century. The sense of to mention is from the 1550s. I don't know about you. And mind you, I'm not just ever gonna, I don't think I speak really on Tartaria through any of this because there's enough people doing that. But as a kid, I didn't know that name. But you better believe in preschool and anytime I could, I'd be like, what about that mud flood like 500 years ago, where everybody forgot everything and there was a flood in the sea of memory? Um, So interestingly enough, if I haven't mentioned it, and even if I have, I will mention it again, that a lot of meanings to words change in the middle of the 1500s. Or just actually not in the middle, especially in the middle and the 80s and that century, but the entire century, you could say. So it's not about being that literal and specific, and yet um I do think there are ways that things can shift here, and the more someone would try to prove what is happening for everyone, and given that you could say this isn't a sphere, but I think I've done that before, maybe on a different video. But as if we were all this 360 degrees, we could look into one point, or we could all look outward to many inverse points, if you will, or anti-particles. And everybody would be of matter to some degree, whether that's matter or antimatter, and it has to be to some degree both. And so you could say not one of us knows the view, experience, sense, perspective of one other. So there's something to, now I don't remember what I was saying because I'm going on a tangent and I tried to not do that. I went on a tree branch and I try not to do that. Um, so what was I saying? Um, Something to, maybe things don't have to be so sneaky, but maybe things are sneaky in that there are antiparticles. There is antimatter. And so that which is beyond what we could grasp or confirm or acknowledge, because everything's moving and changing, and not to the degree where it's like everything's chaos. And yet, what are we doing and why? Because even when someone goes in is like, here's the statistics, it's like, who gives a shit? Some areas, yes, there's a means for why we're doing this. And yet, the further you go on certain paths, you will not be able to pull yourself out as easily because the confirmation will be there through, you're right, or some type of reaction or connection to what is being shared that maybe garners attention that is it feels a certain type of way, a certain kind of stimulation occurs, and that, so I can't speak to everybody, but part of, I feel like, what I was trying to say is just that I I do feel that a lot of things changed in the 1500s, and I won't say across the board what has happened all over, because I am not everybody and I am not here. I personally don't know, maybe in 30 years, but I don't know if that's my goal, to have everybody who's alive on the same page. I think that's a little, you know what, I'll leave that open. I just think some things about it. Getting back to this, okay. To remind someone, bring back the memory of, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Did I include the one portion of this though? Okay, yes. Recollect, to recover or recall knowledge of, to bring back to the mind or memory. Latin recollectus. Recollegere. To take up again, regain, etymologically, to collect again, to gather again. Remember implies that a thing exists in the memory, not that it is actually present in the thoughts at the moment, but that it recurs without effort. Recollect means that a fact forgotten or partially lost to memory is, after some effort, recalled and present to the mind. Remembrance is the storehouse, recollection the act of culling out this article and that from the repository. He remembers everything he hears and can recollect any statement when called on. The words, however, are often confounded, and when we say we cannot remember a thing, when we mean we cannot recollect it. And this is why, if you hear me speak, I will often use the word recollect over remember, not to be a snooty know-it-all, but to trigger something, because does the effort have to be hard? No. Is it simple? Potentially, but simple doesn't mean easy either. And so that is where I feel creativity and cleverness are required. And so sometimes an effort could be twirling in a circle and going la 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 la, or what I do also. So this is silly, but it is things that I would think might activate a younger me. And while younger me also came with a lot of trauma, there was a profound amount of wisdom that I feel I was conditioned to ignore, let go of, whatever. And so I like to do things often that are childish. And it's not just to do them to be like, look, I'm being childish. It's genuinely because I find joy in them. And I find joy in the nonsensical, sort of whimsical nature of it. So it could be as simple as something I do often, which is purposefully use a cart at a grocery store. And then I will, after I'm shopping, put my bags in my car, and then I will ride the cart back to the caddy place for the carts. And then I skip back to the car and I might swing my arms and go la 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 la, la. Partially because fun. People think that's dumb. That's even more fun. People think that's lame, and they have even pointed and laughed at me because I'll skip down my street and do that also, and my street's a busy street. But it's just something I've done since preschool. In preschool, when we'd be waiting in line to use the bathroom, I'd be like, guys, just step out of line, twirl while we're walking, do a little dance, do whatever it is that's not just standing in a line, to sort of shake things up so you're not locked into something that you're not aware you're being locked into. And so while it has seemed hypervigilant to people, I've done a pretty freaking good job of retaining and recollecting certain things. And so part of, I feel, my duty here is to assist in others recollecting. And sometimes the effort isn't about working hard. It's not about being like, if I just study hard enough or get the right word for this thing. That's not about following a framework and being like, this is right. This is the way. This is the key we've all been missing. But okay. Beasts and babies remember, i.e., recognize. Man alone recollects. This distinction was made by Aristotle. Do we agree? Maybe we don't. Maybe me and you don't agree. I don't know if I agree with that. Because am I anthropomorphizing? I can never say that word because then I get pulled back into studying ancient Greek, anthropos, and me being an awful ancient Greek student. But oh my gosh, too many declensions. Um, but does a speck of dust not contain all that is in a holographic plane? Would it be just me making things up to believe or even know and feel that my cats recollect? They do. They do because Bob is so clever. He would not make up things about getting food. They will call it like training or conditioning. But I find that's a sort of like what I call new age, is where men are like, we're the best, aren't we? Man versus beast and animal man. And again, I think for all language and frequencies and words, there's a time and a place for it. But then something happens where our ego at times can be like this anti-particle and particle, and we can sort of step into alter selves. And I'm not saying that everyone's just under mind control, and yet there are a lot of ways that this can happen easily, which is why in preschool I'd be like, don't just walk in a line when someone tells you to walk in a line. You're not going to get in trouble for twirling around in a circle. But it will throw off, I mean, as a kid, I'd be like, it will throw off the bad aliens. And I couldn't say that to people. So, okay, I will get off this tree branch and keep reading. Okay, two things. One, oh my God, I cannot stand that last line. I swear I come across things just to tick me off because what? Am I going to spend my whole life trying to explain over and over how much I conceived and understood as a baby? Or am I just going to do the damn thing and live my life? The other thing is a note that I will mention a mud flood that happened around 500 years ago. 500 years ago from this year would be 1525. So these slides are from then. What if part of this shift is in the terminology that has to do with a massive reset, but one that came from within? What is the mud flood? So this is from Ascension Glossary, take with grains of salt. Mud flood is a conspiracy theory that claims that a massive catastrophic flooding event occurred in the distant past, burying many cities and structures around the world under layers of mud, essentially wiping out a supposed ancient civilization known as the Tartarian Empire, and leaving behind the architectural remnants we see today partially submerged underground. This theory often pinpoints the unusual building features like basement level doors and windows as evidence of this flood event. Yet the mud flood theory is not supported by mainstream science and is widely considered a fringe conspiracy theory. I'm laughing because I remember traveling to Canada as a kid and pointing out the windows and the floors and like being like, yeah, they'll say it's for this, but you watch as people start digging over the years. It's more and more that will be discovered about how this isn't maybe, because again, I didn't know the word Tartaria, it never came to me, and I've never felt that attached to it because I think it was more than that. And I think sometimes when we try to like pinpoint and prove and like do a label and a definition with things that are in this considerably fringe conspiracy theory territory, it sort of takes on egregor qualities of its own and becomes something else. And like I mean, look online at how many people just post whatever the fuck triggers them. So many smart people post. I was gonna say being dumb, but I don't like saying that. So many people who are brilliant and able to see so much, being stimulated by their senses and just sharing something. And it's like, and mind you, we've all done that in certain ways, but I also feel like, and maybe I'm speaking, I'm projecting, maybe we not all of us have, but I do think there's something to being able to feel into, like, again, why are we doing what we're doing? Doesn't have to be that profound or deep. But checking in and being like, why am I doing this? If you're like, I don't know, sometimes it's like, okay. Other times it's like, oh, I was simply influenced by somebody because we are human. Maybe not everyone's fully human. I don't know. Maybe I'm not. What is it to be a human? But let me not do that. Okay. However, there is significant evidence that an earth-shifting event has occurred in various parts of the world, leaving entire cultures in the wake of destruction. Yet the catastrophic changes seem to be historically ignored and seldom reported. Many independent researchers have joined together to form a mudflood community in which they share their findings. Some of these events happened as recent as 400 years ago, and they seem to line up with cultural prophecies, except the timelines are off by thousands of years. This would hint to a possible fact that many events touted to take place in antiquity may have been as recent as only a few hundred years ago. I wish you would have heard all the questions I asked in elementary school, where I'd be like, who wrote these textbooks? Who wrote these books? This doesn't make any sense about what actually happened here, and I'm just gonna get called crazy. Sorry, I must be having some allergies. Okay. Um, where was I? Entire buildings, cathedrals, and palaces. I'm trying to do the Lisa Renee voice again. Hold on a sec. Let me blow my nose and not on camera. Okay. Entire buildings, cathedrals, and palaces, some of which are not nearly 200 years old, according to the official narrative, are probably buried under 14 feet of soil. Provably? Provably? Which one is it? Entire cities on every continent all over the world. But you're labeled an idiot or shamed as a conspiracy theorist for nothing. Why is this important? The imagery and profound amount of information surrounding this event are numerous, begging us to realize once and for all that it is entirely possible for hidden societies to alter the history of humanity within a very short period with little to any notice. Um, Funny enough, the day that I put that info in this slide, the information was edited, and that is because holography. I see it that way at least, that when we acknowledge certain things, they become more evident or present in a certain way. And so then when things become oppressed or denied or abandoned, they don't not live on, but what I'm literally talking about here. I mean, if you it doesn't even need to be abandoned in a way where it's like dismissed, like oh, nobody's talking about that. But like an example I give is when our house burned down when I was 15. It didn't fully burn down. It was a balloon structure in the architecture, and so the inside burned down, but the outside structure remained standing for the most part, even though the fire was so big. There were like so many fire trucks called to the scene, and it was on the news. But that night, somebody who was my friend, while I was just like, oh, my cats died. I can't believe this all happened. He was like, well, it didn't actually burn down. And this was someone who claimed to be like very God-loving and religious in a certain way that I felt like he was feeling emotions from me sharing about this. And again, forgive me if I happen to bring this up some other time. I don't know. Like I said, it's an example I give. Um, but it was because my own pain as a human and him also being human, it was as if me feeling emotions was too vulnerable. So rather than be there or not for me, he chose to deny what happened by getting technical with certain terminology. And that's why you won't find me being like, that fire was, or that storm was started by the secret government. Like, we actually don't know enough here as individuals, but egregor energy is real, and there are nefarious acts that have gone on, and yet it is oftentimes our own attention that fuels things. Not to say we are to blame. And yet, because of the way my house burned down, I know how things looked. And so people will full on say they know for a fact that, like, that was lasers that started that fire. And mind you, while those things can occur, there's a greater force here that exists, and it is the unknown. I think people don't want to say they don't know. And I think that comes from the similar energy of someone feeling emotive towards someone, but not wanting to get vulnerable or feel that way is somebody who can't recollect a timeline of events that have occurred here. So there's a feeling, and then that feeling gets transformed or projected in ways of like doubting certain things or calling them crazy because it triggers a certain part of the being that is deeply emotional because of the events that have transpired over time when it comes to catastrophes and cataclysms, whether that be through our ancestry and molecular memory or simply being a human in this plane. Also up to you how you believe things, but I believe we either are experientially connected to all that is because it's holographic, or literally I've been a crystal or a speck of dust or a bird or a worm or a bug, and I recollect the scale and spectrum of beingness that would seem a certain way in those lives, for example, being a bug, being afraid of these huge giants, which are people, etc., and seeing how that might translate and transform over time through sort of a game of telephone, stories broken up in certain ways, but also simply unspoken social taboo, the idea, the feeling that you shouldn't talk about things or you'll be called crazy or whatever. So yeah, yeah. Hippocampus. This is a kind of sea monster, part horse, part dolphin or fish, often pictured pulling Neptune's chariot. From Latin, hippocampus, from Greek, hippocampos. Hippos meaning horse, campos being a sea monster. And perhaps some might say related to campe, caterpillar, little caterpillar. Um, Used from the 1570s, so again in the 1500s, hundreds, it's the name of a type of fish, the seahorse. And then after 1706, part of the brain more often, because of resemblance to this fish. So hippocampus, seahorse, um, this is from Ascension Glossary as well. The hippocampus is a major component of the brain and humans and other vertebrates. Humans and other mammals have two hippocampi, one in each side of the brain. The hippocampus is part of the limbic system and plays important roles in the consolidation of information from short-term memory to long-term memory and in spatial memory that enables navigation. And so this would not just be navigation of like proprioception, because it would say that in a certain way. Enabling navigation through space-time, which involves yet again particle, antiparticle, matter, antimatter, antimatter, black hole, white hole, like uh planes of reality, the sagittal plane, all those different ways you could cut through something, and the ability to navigate one's mind palace, which would contain the sea of memory. The hippocampus is located in the allocortex with neural projections into the neocortex in humans as well as other primates. The hippocampus, as the medial pallium, is a structure found in all vertebrates. In humans, it contains two main interlocking parts, the hippocampus proper, proper, also called Ammon's horn, and the dentate gyrus. So I'll continue to share, and I want you to remember to take this with a grain of salt because when it comes to brain terminology, I still feel that most people are going along with sort of like a mainstream ideology, especially about what the limbic brain is, etc. So let's play and not take it all too concretely or seriously. A little bit more from Ascension Glossary, though. In Alzheimer's disease and other forms of dementia, the hippocampus is one of the first regions of the brain to suffer damage. Or is it, or does that happen because of linear time is real? It's not all there is. Oh, I'm like, what is that noise? But I forget there's a shooting range nearby. How do I forget that? Because it's so damn loud? I don't know, because I like to live in my own little world. Every now and then, though, there's a louder booming machine or gun someone's using, and it's like, whoa, I can really hear that. Um, okay, so uh linear time living in a plane where no one's even having to say it to you necessarily. You just feel like you shouldn't say that stuff out loud. The stuff that everybody might be thinking or feeling, having daydreams about, having night dreams about, thinking about right before they wake up or right after they wake up or right before they go to sleep, etc. Living continuously in a linear manner in a plane like that is basically a prison without anyone having to chain you in the way that you might believe you are, maybe that is a part of where your mind goes, as it says, nope, can't exist here. And that is maybe a form of dementia. The hippocampus is one of the first regions of the brain to suffer damage. Short-term memory loss and disorientation are included among the early symptoms. Damage to the hippocampus can also result from oxygen starvation, hypoxia, encephalitis, or medial temporal lobe epilepsy. People with extensive bilateral hippocampal damage may experience anterograde amnesia, the inability to form and retain new memories. Maybe it is like a fractal, a fraction, a um, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Fracture. Perceivably, like a kaleidoscopic fracture, a holographic insert of sorts. Since different neuronal cell types are neatly organized into layers in the hippocampus, it has frequently been used as a model system for studying neurophysiology. The form of neuroplasticity known as long-term potentiation, LTP, was initially discovered to occur in the hippocampus and has often been studied in this structure. LTP is widely believed to be one of the main neural mechanisms by which memories are stored in the brain. Hmm. In rodents as model organisms, the hippocampus has been studied extensively as part of brain system responsible for spatial memory and navigation. Many neurons in the rat and mouse hippocampus respond as place cells. That is, they fire bursts of action potentials when the animal passes through a specific part of its environment. Hippocampal place cells interact extensively with head direction cells whose activity acts as inertial compass and conjecturally with grid cells in the neighboring entorhinal cortex. So, mind you, yes, while all these things can be true and they can prove certain things through experiments, there's a lack of the acknowledgement and even ability to measure at all beyond like acknowledgement and recognition, but like consideration, and even analysis of what I might just label as an antiparticle. So let's say that like while yes, you can observe and manipulate and manufacture experimental values to set up a little conjecture and go, oh, this is what happens. That's not all there is. Just like in everyday life, people aren't talking about everything they might consider to be a secret, and nor do they need to, but there is way more going on. A really small example, if we're looking at like animals, they don't wear clothes. I mean, people put clothes on animals, but what I'm saying is just being a human alone. Not saying everyone needs to be naked, but that there's a layer already of concealment where we don't know the whole picture. Or you could even take it further. I'm pretty sure I already brought this up at some point, but we have an outside of our bodies. There's also an inside. Science is not the only way to measure these things, and yet the word science can be taken so many ways. I'm not trying to diss science. I'm just saying that the further along we go in a certain manner, it is going to be more up to the individual to detach from certain influence. And like I brought up before, sort of that Taurus energy of like going outward, being external, like being this individualized identity, and then coming back to oneself in a sort of different way again and again before going back out. It doesn't have to be that literal or in that order exactly. But there's something to saying, okay, but at what point do we go further in time where most measured and recorded history only goes so far back, and then those points at certain time in history are typically referred to as a starting point of sorts, but it is also things that are referred to as like the first written or recorded, blah, blah, blah. How do we actually know that? And that is where mud flood conspiracy theory and ideology can become really interesting, but it is also something that is now, in my opinion, getting turned into not that all academia is a bad thing, and yet why did we need all these universities, institutions, scholarly academic things when things were not what people put them in these earliest recording or these certain ideologies? Things are not as streamline and clear, and maybe that is an agenda, but maybe it also has to do with collective remembrance versus recollection. Maybe even people born into certain bloodlines that aren't about like, oh, they're vampires or oh, they're demons or oh, they're hybrids and they just live for hundreds and hundreds of years. Without that part, there are also just people who are born into things and they don't remember. And so they're doing stuff and they're being stimulated and they don't have the capacity to, let's say, be triggered and then go, well, what's that? Why am I so bothered by that? without maybe needing to figure out why. And yet, for let's say someone being born into a certain type of family or bloodline, they may not be able to question certain things either, just in the same way that we are born out of those bloodlines and no one needs to say to you certain things, but you know you shouldn't. Or maybe someone only says it once and it feels so cutting that you're like, oh, I'm terrified to actually say that weird thing, I think. And then it becomes, well, we must be scholarly. We must use complete words in order to sound a certain way. And that's why when I'll say, yeah, I don't know how to pronounce things, and I definitely might sound dumb, I'm not dissing myself. I'm just making it clear for people that are in that world of things that that's not all that's going on. And you can step into it and everything's holographic, but when you are the one choosing, you are the one choosing. And that can be hard to face of I actually have a choice, and we have a way more choice than we might like realize. So it's not to say again, it's all your fault or blah blah blah. But I'm saying like we do have more autonomy than we might want to. Or like it's good old Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. And we have it. What when we're coming into this plane, maybe not everyone has the same path as me. Um, Now I'm getting a little distracted. Thinking about some things because I remember conception, if you will, but I've also, trigger warning, I've had two abortions, different circumstances and scenarios, but choices I made. And if those lives or beings remember conception as well, like I am not to say what that story is or isn't, and yet there's a piece of like informational value here where it wouldn't need to be put into anyone else's arena of analyzation, and I can have my own experience with it, even if I get called names or judged or criticized in certain ways. Can I rise above that? Rise above that? Can I still be me through the spectrum that is life without becoming a victim to the things that I could list out that are awful, but also not be so in my ego in a certain way, because ego is not good or bad, but in a way where I believe I know it all, or I'm trying to prove, or I am, like with astrology, love astrology, but I can't get down with someone being like, this is the correct way, and here's why, is because you just look up and blah, 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 because that's not all that's going on ever. So, like, I can hear what someone's point is if they're trying to make a point, but if the point is to say, well, you should look at this because of that, I'm not anybody else but me. I can, experience a lot of things and, intuit, and yet I don't really want to look to a system to tell me who I am, even if that system's beautiful and I love hearing about it. It's like, oh, well, for me, for example, and it might not be for everybody, but I know I had that like in preschool being like, hey guys, you remember other lives? And like the first week of preschool, people being like, you're so weird. And me being like, oh, I guess we don't say these things. And so no one needed to necessarily even say it, although it was said to me more and more over time. Don't say those things, or you're crazy, or you're stupid, or you're the weirdest person in Maryland, or whatever. You're the weirdest person I've ever met. And I'd be like, oh, because I don't think what I've been saying is that weird. And yet I felt like a part of myself shut down more and more over time, even if I continued to speak on things. And so I feel there's something to being able to get back to that version of ourselves for all of us, while I'm acknowledging that I'm projecting my own experience to a degree. So I thought it was a lot of branches I just went on. Role in memory. Psychologists and neuroscientists generally agree that the hippocampus plays an important role in the formation of new memories about experienced events, episodic or autobiographical memory. Part of this function is hippocampal involvement in the detection of new events, places, and stimuli. Some researchers regard the hippocampus as a part of a larger medial temporal lobe memory system responsible for general declarative memory, memories that can be explicitly verbalized. These would include, for example, memory for facts in addition to episodic memory. The hippocampus also encodes emotional context from the amygdala. This is partly why returning to a location where an emotional event occurred may evoke that emotion. There is a deep emotional connection between episodic memories and places. You don't need to go there physically, though. this temporal location, like between your temples. The mind palace is much more than just the brain. An example of me saying you don't need to travel. We might all be different, but I know I felt quite tortured by my mind as a kid because I felt like I'm experiencing a lot more than people around me. And mind you, we're now in times where people are speaking on neurodivergence and autism in different ways, and I will also do that. But I also just want to uh acknowledge that you know, like let's say if I said imagine a lemon. Imagine that you were holding a lemon. Not me, not you looking at me doing this, but imagine you holding a lemon and like cutting it, or maybe it's already cut and you can like squeeze it and you see the little bursts, or you smell it and you can, your taste, you might like, your tongue and mouth might produce some saliva, but there's no lemon. But is there? What is, what is particle, antiparticle, etc. There's a lot of things we could get into there of different sciences trying to prove things, and there are places to prove things, sure. But what I'm saying is you don't necessarily need to travel. And I'm part of even me saying when I was younger, I was hyper vigilant. I've always been very mindful of what music I listen to. I love music. It's great. And I know people demonize TV a lot, but with TV, typically you have to be engaged where you're watching, listening, and maybe if you can't hear, you're reading the words. Maybe you can hear and you're still reading the word. Like there's an engagement that involves more senses, whereas with music, it is designed to pretty much only be engaged through the ears. There can be music videos and concerts, etc., and yet you can just listen to music and it can evoke a lot. And not that you can't do that with listening to a show or whatever, but it's literally designed for viewing as well. And so as a kid, I was just, and especially in the last 5 years, I would rather sit in silence sometimes. And when I watch shows, I will not fully engage in terms of watching and listening. And that has made me a not so fun person in some ways, or I also just pretended to be a certain way. Part of me gave up in life, like I've mentioned, and just was like, I'm just gonna watch Lilo and Stitch every day. And I'm gonna watch, one of my favorite things was Triumph the Comic Dog, for me to poop on. And then the like unseen Saturday Night Live skits that didn't air. One of the best ones being Will Ferrell playing Gus Chiggins, the old prospector. I don't know. I really would like to get lost in worlds of like at least laughing because I didn't understand time. So I went from especially age 1 to age 30 pretty much never being able to talk to anyone about anything that I felt and actually see, like people would either be amazed by me, dismiss me, or be like, you're crazy, you're weird, you're stupid, that's wrong, or whatever. And so as time went on, I'd be like, oh my God, I just need to laugh. Like this place is crazy. It's already painful enough just to exist, but then you're a human and there's life and dramas and deaths and loss. And I mean, there's lots of cool stuff too, but it was terrifying for quite a while there. And so, now what am I? See, I'm on a branch again. Let me come back here. I don't know how I do that. Like, that's probably why I shouldn't teach anyone because I don't know how to stick to things. But maybe that's a goal for me. Okay, let me stop. Okay, theta rhythm. The underlying currents producing the theta wave are generated mainly by densely packed neural layers of the entorhinal cortex, CA3, and the dendrites. Dendrites are branches of pyramidal cells. The theta waves is one of the largest signals seen on EEG and is known as the hippocampal theta rhythm. Here on the left we have a capital theta letter, and then on the right we have a lowercase theta letter. Theta and phi, it's like the torus too. It's interesting. Limbic system. Areas of the amygdala and hippocampus in the limbic system provide the foundation for emotional states that connect us to the higher sensory perception levels where we connect with positive spiritual and mystical experiences during our meditative states. I'm trying not to go on a tree branch. This means that through practicing meditation and cultivating stillness of the mind, we can develop mental skills and strengthen our brain to overpower artificial inputs towards negative emotions and replace them with positive states. See, kind of like I said, I go on tangents or tree branches. And then I read something, I go, well, that's pretty much what I was saying, but in a shorter way. We can train ourselves to hold inner stillness and a clear mind. Going into deeper meditation to generate inner stillness works to clear emotional negativity and dissolve neuronal entrainment to negativity in our amygdala through the mere focus of going inside ourselves and holding meditative stillness. I don't think we have to be completely still. I think you could also just go outside and connect with the earth because of the negative energy of the earth can take it on and can draw it out. It needs it. In the nothingness of the inner void, we are the eternal light within the complete absence of any unpleasant emotion or thought, just existing in the moment as pure stillness, peace, and calm. Mm, I don't mean to, but I also, it's like maybe I would say some of the more new agey things that I call new agey are also like some white people things. And not that it's white people things, but there's often a focus on not feeling bad ever. And I think there's a point of what is being said here, but the words just sometimes land different with me. In the nothingness of the inner void, we are the eternal light. We're always the eternal light, even when we're a piece of shit. Sorry, but I get it. And I get it because I've been there, but maybe it's because I sat in such deep contemplation as a toddler and then became very angry after years of being like, what the fuck's going on here? What? And so it's not that I think I know best or right, but there is something to me wanting to say take it with a grain of salt, especially when I read from Ascension Glossary or certain things where there are points being made, but then there are also underlying things that are like semi-ecclesiastic in some way, where it becomes about washing ourselves clean of something. And I think there's, again, a time and a place for that sort of energy and speak. When we decide to be the master of our own thoughts and emotions, we become the master of our own brains, and these artificial frequencies and fears will cease to disturb us. This can be achieved through a simple daily meditation practice in which inner stillness and focusing on breath is emphasized, which is suggested to maintain inner peace during this incredibly chaotic time. So, yes and no. Remember, recollect that meditation, contemplation, devout preoccupation, private devotions, prayer, thought, reflection, study, a thinking over, consider, take appropriate measures. So please follow your path, no matter the dogma about how you should follow another, only if that's what you really wanna or gotta do. And then you'll know when you're doing it, oh, this is what I gotta do. So in some ways it's still the right path, but just sometimes we make things a little harder than they need to be. So in the class, we went on a journey, and what I do in journeys is we pick a location, whether that be in a non-physical space or actually physical space, maybe an event, and we use a frequency. Um, Sometimes I use something like bees buzzing, like an audio of that, or of buzzing bees slowed down really slow and using that. And so we travel without too much of an intention of manipulating, but we go to witness and acknowledge and recognize and see what comes back there. So interestingly enough, again, timing wise, Santa Rosa Island recently, the day before my birthday, apparently, so this new moon cycle, there was a huge fire there. Devastating in some ways, and yet, even with the house fire I had as a kid, I was like, this is preparing me for something else. Like, there's something about the feelings that get generated, and even what burns and ashes, and you know how often like mold is demonized, like in a place with heat, and then there's fire, and then maybe there was wet, maybe there's fire put out. Things form in ways that someone could call it bad, but I do wonder what beautiful new things are going to be born in this place of Santa Rosa Island. And so this is off the coast of California. It is one of the Channel Islands, and I chose it literally by me typing in Rose into my app on my phone. And I went, "Oh, I've never been there or really heard much about it. We're gonna do that." And then I looked into the land and I was like, "Wow, would you guys like to go there?" So it was really beautiful what we saw, learning a lot about the history of California and the name of California and what it comes from, which is this cool story actually at some point about uh Khalifa, and this like sort of battle ensues. There's like Gryffindors in the sky and but yeah, so this is from some of that. And I included this note of different clairs and how they might be described. So we have clairvoyance, clairgustance, clairsalience, clairaudience, claircognizance, clairsentience, clairempathy, clairtangency. That I just realized I added clairsmellience to something recently and I accidentally wrote it as clairgustance, but it's clairsalience. And I named it clairsmellience there. Um, I mean, it could be its name. Clairaudience, claircognizance, clairsentience, clairempathy, clairtangency. So these are just words and labels used to describe things. And some of this stuff is also like what is used in human design. Like clairtangency at the bottom would be like the touch cognition. That's what I have in tropical astrology. So being able to detect psychic information through your hands, but that's also why me no likey being on my phone. I mean, I like it, but I get sucked in a way where I am like really almost full on experiencing like if I because my hand's touching the phone and then I go on, let's say, social media, it's like nothing is private on these apps to the degree which people think, oh, if I post this, this is what people see. Nope. There's way more going on than that. And sorry, I don't know what your clairs are. I'm doing it too, where someone's picking up on something I think someone can't see, or it might be a seeming secret, etc. So I listed these out on the journey for people to be aware of things that might happen when we're journeying together. And then I chose this shape where we did a little bit of a cube and an octahedron. And so this is where the island is. Like I said, it's part of the Channel Islands and it's down here, Southern California energies. A variety of the Torrey pine. Um, that makes me think of what was that show? Wayward Pines that I watched. Okay, a variety of the Torrey pine grows on the island. The population of this endangered species is estimated at approximately 1,000 trees. The island oak is native to the island as well. So unfortunately, yeah, some Torrey pines were lost during this fire. And I don't think the fire is all bad, but I also am okay with not feeling good all the time. You know what I'm saying? What else do we have here? Flightless geese, giant mice, pygmy mammoths that are extinct, while the island fox, spotted skunk, and munchkin dudleya, dudleyanoma, one of the 6 endemic plant species on the island, still live there. The island is home to one of the only 3 known populations of Hoffman's rock cress. So look at the little baby island fox. So cute. And then this is this spotted skunk, also so cute. And this was me putting a mammoth and then a giant mouse, like as if the mouse was the size of the mammoth or the pygmy mammoth. They were probably the same size, right? This is the succulent here, Dudley Noma. And then the I believe that's the rock cress, this flower. Surrounding waters serve as the invaluable nursery for the sea life that feeds larger marine mammals and seabirds. Great white sharks, including some adults over 15 feet in length, are fairly common in the northern Channel Islands, especially San Miguel and Santa Rosa. They feed on the abundant marine animals. It is unwise to swim or dive alone near seal colonies where white sharks may be present. Hello. I feel like my dad cut more. I totally got distracted, sorry. Um, I have bushes outside of my window, and I think my dad cut more of them. There's a catbird right now, and he's like tweet 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 tweet. If you know about catbirds, they have like there's different lungs where they can do some cool sounds at this one, two sounds at once kind of deal. All right, the rare endemic lichen Caloplaca obami, discovered in 2007 and described by Carrie Knudsen in 2009, commemorates U.S. President Barack Obama, named after the 44th President of the United States in honor of his support of science and scientific education. I roll so many things named after men. So much coining, so much branding, so much framing. Gross. But also, okay, cool. It is 100 miles from Los Angeles. It is an Elysian Isle. It's the title of a New York Times article that I didn't want to pay for about Santa Rosa Island. So if you have access to it, go for it. I don't know what it says, but clearly it's cool and it's about this beautiful place that recently had a big fire that was most likely caused by man, the person that was there. So this is the octahedron inside of the hexahedron, and I put 88 and the Santa Rosa. It said grain of salt journey because that was the class that I taught, but I changed it to 88 for this. So psyche, soul. We're going to go for like 15 more minutes, I think. Before getting into the first layer of this recording, so this is clearly the first page of a recording, we have sort of a pre-layer. The word psyche, and this, I wanted to get through all of this because it relates back to what I brought up before about the current moon cycle. The word psyche and its relation to the word and energy soul. Recently, someone in the class that I taught mentioned the Greek word psyche, suke. From a tarot reader I follow that week, she also mentioned it. The word psychic comes from the Greek psychikos, meaning of the soul or of the mind, or psychikos, which is derived from psyche, meaning soul, spirit, or breath of life. In ancient Greek philosophy, psyche refers to the animating force of a living being, what we might call the soul or consciousness. To be psychic, then, is to be of the mind, to be of the soul, not just your mind and soul, but the mind and soul of all. Hence, we are all psychic. Psyche, etymology, animating spirit, the human spirit or mind, the soul, the mind, the spirit, life, one's life, the invisible animating principle or entity which occupies and directs the physical body. Understanding. The mind is the seat of thought, the faculty of reason. It also means ghost or spirit of a dead person. Potentially akin to psychane, sukane, to blow, to breathe, to cool, to make dry. And there's sometimes a trace to a Proto-Indo-European root base, to blow, to breathe. Sanskrit bas, probably imitative. There's always contention on where the words actually come from per what is language of all languages. Personified by the Greeks as Psyche, the beloved of Eros, often represented as a fair young girl. The butterfly was her symbol. Also in ancient Greek, departed soul, spirit, or ghost, seen as a winged creature and oftenly represented symbolically as a butterfly or a moth. The word had extensive sense development in Platonic philosophy and Jewish influenced theological writing of St. Paul. And the Greek word, again, was used as the soul as the seat of feelings, desires, affections. The soul regarded as a moral being designed for everlasting life. The soul as an essence which differs from the body and is not dissolved by death. It's like the caterpillar hippocampus going from you know, into a chrysalis or a cocoon, whether it's a butterfly or a moth, and sort of being dissolved in some way. Psychological sense of the mind is from the 1650s, or I mean 1910. Human soul is 1650s. So, what else? I'm not going to read all. Pneuma, representing the divine breath breathed into man, the nous, the logos, higher entities, more universal, more divine, the ethically pure. By this more explicit separation of the intellectual and ethical activities from the physiological, the conception of the mental or psychical was at length reached. That's a little bit of word salad there. Word soup or word salad. I had shared before a deep fear of moths that I had growing up, and actually, probably around 2020 is when I stopped being as scared of moths. And that is when I learned about the dragon moth alien that's very scary. And I said, oh, maybe that's why I'm scared of moths. Maybe I can let that go. Only recently, though, did I see the moth in Mother. Psychic of or pertaining to the human soul. Of the soul, spirit, or mind. Somatikos. Concerned with the life only, animal, natural, soul, mind, life. The meaning characterized by psychic gifts pertaining to the class of extraordinary and obscure phenomena of the mind, not usually treated by psychologists. A medium, person susceptible to psychic impressions. And of course, this reminds me of daemon or demon energy as the genius of our soul, if you will, but also from the Golden Compass slash his dark materials, and mentioning the ermine before, how if you see a weasel or creature at the beginning of your path, you must greet him or else you may peril. All right, so Psyche as a goddess. Goddess of the soul, often represented as a beautiful woman with butterfly wings, and Psyche again meaning soul or breath of life. And it was a direct translation as anima, the Latin word for soul in Roman mythology. So it fits, it hits, it lands. She was born a mortal woman and eventually granted immortality, born a caterpillar and eventually a butterfly, with beauty that rivaled even Aphrodite. Hi, Bob. You don't have to do that. I'll be done in a little bit, okay? Um, the goddess of love. Psyche is known from the novel The Golden Ass, also known as Metamorphosis, written by Apuleius in the 2nd century. In the myth, she was given multiple trials to be with her beloved Cupid, god of physical love and desire, and son of Venus. Um, uh, sorry, Bob is climbing on things. What's up, homie? Gnostic narrative. Psyche is featured in the creation myth found in the ancient Gnostic text known as On the Origin of the World. Here she appears as a lover of Eros who pours her blood upon him and also upon the earth, which causes the first rose to appear on the earth from a thorn bush. So I found this after I had touched on and found the Santa Rosa Island. And Rose was one of the themes of the Grain of Salt journey, and I'll continue to bring it up in this manner here. So continuing, and I'm just going to probably get through this, and then I'll continue with hippocampus and vision and all of that on the next recording. But I wanted to read these from the most recent moon cycle. So the Taurus moon was aligned with Algol, and like it was a Taurus moon across the board in terms of all the different various approaches you could look at. May 16th being a very Taurus day. I called it Mega Tau Day. So the sun aligning with Algol. And this is often focused upon Medusa and Perseus, and I'm inviting an algal rhythm upgrade, if you will. So Venus will soon align with the asteroid Psyche, and I say, tune into the unique station of your identity, know your spectrum. And in some perspectives, it is said that psyche is the totality of the human mind, conscious and unconscious. In others, psyche is the word for the soul, the light, the spirit, as well as ghost. And in mythos, Psyche is described as the immortal wife of Cupid, and she bears butterfly wings. I didn't put it here for some reason, but Algol means ghost or ghoul in some sense as well. Some say that when a caterpillar is transforming into a butterfly in chrysalis, in some sense, I say that right, it loses its head in the process. In the etymology of the word hippocampus, you could connect the word to be related to campe, which means caterpillar. With Taurus's focus on the cerebellum and the subconscious mind, a nourishing shift in daily choices arrives on all of our plates. Um, oh, Bobby has a hairball, I think. Um, did I? Oh, you know what? I repeated this because I just copy and pasted it from Canva. Hippocampus plays an important role in the consolidation of information from short-term memory to long-term memory and in spatial memory that enables navigation and so much more. So now might be a great time to become more sensibly aware of your desires and your attachments, a heads up, if you will. And with the butterfly shape, we honor an echo of the thyroid, a crucial access point, our shielding that protects our process and our voice, that which assists in the dissemination of all information we come across. And then with the full moon on the 31st of May, approximately, we have what I called a royal star full blue moon. I also called it a royal blue recalibration, a blue diamond moon. And so it aligned with the royal stars. So the sun was at Aldebaran, the moon was at Antares, the north node was at Fomalhaut, and the south node was right next to Regulus. Antares is considered to be a rival of Mars, apparently because its distinct reddish hue. But some say it burns red and green, and it's like encompassing some opposites on perceived color scales. And we've looked at that a little bit too. So I don't think I finished it here. I just wanted to give a little bit of a snapshot of the current energies and this being included in terms of, for one sense, how we might view words like psyche, soul, but also ghost and ghoul and the parts of ourselves that we. Sorry, I'm trying to look for the page where I say thank you. Until next time. But parts of ourselves that we might not be wanting to sit with or willing to face, and yet it doesn't have to all be done in silence and stillness. And you can commit forth an effort that is uniquely aligned to a genuine and authentic you, whatever that means. So, yep, I'll see you soon. Goodbye.